Hi, I'm Tom.
And I'm Jackie.
Welcome to the Self-Sufficient Mercantile.
Nothing fancy.
Just keeping it simple.
So this week I found a few things in the garden I'd like to share with you guys. Some might be good, and some might not be. Okay, so the first thing that I found are mushrooms. Now some people might find these in their garden and freak out. Oh my gosh, I've got mushrooms growing. Something's really wrong. I need to get rid of these. But really, it's an indicator that you have healthy soil. And what we have in these rows are a lot of wood product that we put down for the mulch. And I don't know if that's what kind of helped get this going, or all the rains we've had. We've had a significant amount of rain here in Southern California, probably double what's normal for us. And so I think it's just what was already in the ground is now fruiting. These are the fruiting bodies of the mycelium that are running in the soil. So mushrooms are a good indicator that you have good soil. You've got healthy soil. You want these because they help plants around them uptake nutrients. They help them uptake, especially I think phosphorus it is, break down, organic matter. So they're just creating a healthy environment. So this is a good thing. I'm glad I found this in the garden. So another thing I found I'm not too happy about is this guy in here. You can see him moving around there. That's a grub. And I'm sure you all have seen these guys around in your garden. Not good guys. They might be beneficial in some respects. They probably break down maybe old roots and things like that that are in the, in your beds. But what I'm going to do with this guy is I'm going to feed him to the wild birds. I'm sure that they'll appreciate the snack. So another thing I see a lot in my garden are these guys. Roly-polies. You are probably very familiar with them. I'm going to say they're not the greatest, but they're not the worst, because they have jobs that they do in the garden. They're kind of like, the trash picker-uppers, the composters. These guys, I find them a lot in my compost bin too. What they do is they're breaking down organic matter and they're making it into good soil for your plants. So I'm going to say these are a good thing in my garden. I have had them where they've started eating seedlings, and that's not something that's so great. So if I see I have a really big infestation, I'll use an organic product, maybe Sluggo Plus. That way it kind of takes care of a big outbreak of them. But if I just see a few here and there, I'm really not worried, and I want them in my garden because they're doing a good job. Okay guys, so another thing I found on my fava beans are something I don't know if I'm too happy with. These are aphids. You can see it's just loaded with aphids there. Now they're all on the new growth, which aphids love. They love that nice tender growth. So here's the deal with aphids. I'm not thrilled that I have them on these, but it's kind of at the end of the season for fava beans, so I'm not going to freak out. It's not something I'm really worried about right now. If it was later in the year, let's say on a different crop, maybe peppers or something, and I had this problem on them, then I would be concerned. But if you think about it, nature has a way of dealing with things. So I'm sure in your gardens you've seen ladybugs. The ladybug larvae are particularly great about eating aphids. So whenever you see those guys in your garden, nature's doing its thing, and it's that's the ecosystem that we want to create in our gardens. We want them to be healthy and vibrant and just balanced. But back to these guys. So there's a couple different things if you see a really bad infestation you want to take care of. You can do a couple things. This is one thing that I do. A lot of people don't like to do it, or they might be grossed out by it, but I'll just take my fingers and squish them. That's one thing you can do. If that's not your thing, you can use a hose, just like a stream of water to kind of knock them off. A lot of times that'll work. It's not a permanent fix, but it kind of disrupts their pattern. They don't know, once they fall off the plant, they kind of get lost. You can use organic sprays on these. Neem oil is a really good choice, or maybe an insecticidal soap. And you can make those kinds of things right in your own kitchen. So anyway, like I said, I'm not really concerned right now. Yeah, it's a bad thing, but it's not that bad at this time of the year. So another thing I wanted to mention, and this kind of ties in with the aphids, is be on the lookout for ants in your garden. Because a lot of times the ants are farming the aphids. What they do is they kind of milk them, or they eat the aphids' honeydew. So I think ants are kind of one of those things that are good and bad. You think about what the ants probably are doing underneath the soil. They're probably aerating it, you know, and creating tunnels and pathways, things like that. I mean, you know, ants have their purpose here in the garden. I don't get overly concerned with them in the garden. If I find them in my house, that's another story. But in the garden, we want insects here. You know, we want to create an environment like a little Eden, I guess. So anyway, if you see ants and you see them carrying aphids onto your plants, then you might want to kind of intervene a little bit. Like a natural solution would be a borax mixed with sugar and water, and that's like a natural poison. It's kind of sad to say, but if you need to get rid of them, that's a good alternative. And one last thing I want to mention that I have a big problem with in the garden are one of my favorite things, and that's birds. I love birds. You know, we feed the birds, we have bird baths, but in the garden they can be destructive. I have some old damage here I want to show you on lettuce. You can kind of see the peck marks here. Like I said, this is old damage, so this lettuce has grown out of it. But if I have real tender seedlings, especially greens, boy, the birds just go after them like crazy. So one thing you can do if you have problems with birds is you can cover them with like a row cover, a frost cover, or like an old bed sheet or something. Just something to get the plants big enough so that they can defend themselves against the birds. You know, little pecks here and there really aren't going to matter, but if they demolish your crop, then it's a different story. I don't like using bird netting. We've captured lizards, birds get kind of caught up in it, so I'm not an advocate of the bird netting. But, you know, if that's worked for you in the past and you haven't had problems with it, then that's fine too. So that about wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to see more gardening videos, be sure to subscribe. If you have any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Just post them below. And one last thing we'd like to show you are the bees on the broccoli. They're just going nuts right now on these flowers. We love to see the pollinators in the garden. So happy gardening, everyone.